Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming to the TEKS Certification Survey webinar for 2023-2024. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. To kick us off, I'll introduce myself, and then my colleagues are going to introduce themselves. So my name is Megan Rios. I'm the Director of HQIM, or High Quality Instructional Materials, Financial Sustainability. I'll be leading today's call and have two colleagues here who will be monitoring the questions chat box. Leanne, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Leanne Lee, and my title is State Instructional Materials Procurement Coordinator. I've been working with instructional materials here at TEA since 2014, so chances are I may have come into contact with many of you, and I'm happy to be assisting today.
And hey, everyone, I'm Alejandro Fedez. I'm an instructional materials procurement specialist, and I work on Megan's team in financial sustainability, and thanks for joining.
Perfect. So for today's webinar, a few quick notes. There's a question and answer box where you can drop in any questions you might have. If we're unable to answer or respond to all of them today, we'll follow up with an FAQ document on the instructional materials webpage. And additionally, on that same webpage, we will link a recording of this webinar today as well. So here's a brief agenda of today's call. We're going to discuss the survey, some improvements from last year, timelines, and then next steps. So, as you might know, the TEKS certification is a required document that indicates that the instructional materials your LEA has adopted or plans to adopt for next school year will cover 100% of the TEKS. It'll also certify compliance of the Children's Internet Protection Act. We're also gathering data around scope and sequence management, as well as products used for full subject and supplemental materials. It assesses RLA, math, social studies, science, and phonics. And lastly, there's an optional section focused on the Texas Resource Review and assessment platform usage. So as I mentioned previously, this is required by statute, both the Texas Education Code and the Texas Administrative Code. We've referenced them here in case you need them when meeting with your board or have any questions about the statute. So diving into the process for this year, there are two pieces we'll review in the TEKS certification process. The first is on the left-hand side, which is the fillable form. So in response to feedback we received last year, we created a printable fillable form. We heard people wanted a form that was easier to present to your boards rather than the PDF copy of an online survey software. So you'll fill it out either on your computer or by hand, get it ratified by your board, and then submit the final signature page on the Qualtrics survey as an attachment. So you can think of it as maybe pre-work to assist you with the completion of the Qualtrics survey. I also want to flag that we've updated the fillable form since last week, so you might want to, if you previously accessed the form, if you clear your browsing history, you should be able to see the most up-to-date version. So now on the right-hand side, this is the web-based application through Qualtrics, where after you've completed the form and had it ratified and signed, you'll go into Qualtrics and submit this survey. So the survey should mirror the form, so we'll be moving the information from the form to the survey. And I want to call out a few things on this survey. So once you've opened the survey, you can leave, close out your browser, and you should be able to come back and have your work be saved, as long as you're coming back from the same browser and haven't cleared your browsing history. When it comes to the sections where you're selecting the publisher and products used, once you go into the survey, you're going to see it's a really extensive list of options. It's quite long. So what I personally suggest doing is Control F to find the instructional materials that you're looking for. And at the bottom, you'll see an option for other. So there's a fillable section if your instructional materials aren't on the list. So for example, if you use a district developed material, you can use that fillable section there. If you use different materials across different grade levels and the bands described in the question, so for example, if it's the question around social studies K-5, you're able to select multiple products, and that goes for both the supplemental and full subject materials. And speaking of which, for those For each grade band and subject, you'll see 2 questions. So one is going to ask you to select the products used for your full subject materials, and the other is going to ask you to select the products used for your supplemental materials. And we've shared the definition for both of those in both the form and the survey for your reference. On the last page of the survey, you'll upload the fillable form signature page, which is the page that's been ratified and signed. You don't need to upload the entire form, just that final page will be fine. And after completion of the survey, you'll be given the option to download your response, which I highly recommend. You should also get a confirmation email once completed with a link to your results. So again, I'd suggest downloading your response just in case you have an issue with that automatic email response. So here are a few improvements and changes from last year. The first being that your superintendent does not need to be the person to submit the form. The second is that fillable form that we just described. And then lastly, the improved layout and user experience. Here is the sequence of steps in order to complete the TEKS certification. So one call out is the form needs to be ratified in an open board meeting. So for some of you, that might mean getting on a board agenda a month in advance. So want to flag that if that's applicable to your LEA. In terms of timeline, here you're going to see a timeline of the TEKS certification as well as the EMAT access timeline. So a call out that we're requesting that LEA submit the TEKS certification survey by May 1st to ensure access to allotment funds in EMAT when it reopens. We're currently having that set to reopen in mid-May. I also want to remind folks that we're not able to determine your allotment until we have the signed General Appropriations Act and the regular session ends May 29th. The IMTA allotment should be released by September 1st. Also want to flag that LEAs may submit requisitions for accessible instructional materials without the TEKS certification survey being completed, as those are funded separately and not from IMTA funds. But you won't be able to submit requisitions during the closure of EMAT, which again reopens mid-May. And we typically advise LEAs place Braille orders before the end of May and large print and audio orders by mid-July, so that you can receive them by the beginning of the school year. So in terms of some next steps, we're hosting office hours on Tuesday, March 28th at 11 a.m. So if you have any questions, we recommend dropping into that session. Alternatively, we have a help desk. You can always submit a help desk ticket there. So next steps, first is gather information so you can complete the form, register and prepare for office hours or prepare any questions for office hours. Those aren't mandatory, but if it's helpful, feel free to join, even if you're just listening into other folks' questions. Obtain local board approval and then complete the TEKS certification survey, which is that Qualtrics survey with the attached approved and signed form. And again, we recommend completing these steps by May 1st so that you can be prepared to re-access your allotment in EMAT mid-May. And then I referenced a lot of links here. All of those are going to be linked here, and we can drop those into the chat in case helpful.